All right, everybody, what's up? Just when you thought this Podventure had come to an end and Mark and I capped off our Coues deer hunt in Arizona, the Subaru made it, well, instead of turning around and driving right back to Wisconsin, we actually carried on westward, and here we are in Los Angeles. And the location is actually right across the street, and I noticed this immediately from the Porsche driving experience. But if you're in LA, skip that altogether and go immediately across the street to an even cooler place, astronomically. We are at Renner Racing Development here, and I'm with Mark. He's still here. In fact,
still alive.
Maybe even a car guy. We'll get into that. But to our right is Damyan Tuchenishki. All right, I got it. And Damyan here has been, I'm just going to let you introduce yourself, right? I mean, you've been with this shop since basically the beginning, right?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my name's Damyan, and I've been with me and my dad opened the shop 3.5 years ago now. And all we do is Subarus.
That's right. And that's why we had to come see these guys. Like, if you are into Subarus, if you follow a lot of racing and whatnot, chances are, maybe you've heard of these guys, or you've probably certainly seen, if you've ever Googled, like, super sick custom Subarus, chances are in, like, Google Images, you've seen a lot of their work. And I know my brother and I, that's kind of how we stumbled across you at one point, because he was searching, like, both of us were geeking out over badass custom Subarus. And there's a really cool car, Subaru in history around here in America that we ended up tracing back to your guys' shop. And so can you go into like a little bit of the story of this? Because obviously we've been working on Subaru Forester. We just kind of wanted to have this be, for those of you out there listening, like, if you're into hunting, you're kind of like, okay, the car thing's cool, guys, but I'll wait for the next Podventure. Okay, this is basically going to be a big car gush fest. But it's definitely worth it. Super cool story. Even Mark, you got super into it. So
man, it's way interesting. And from, I'll just say it, like an outsider's perspective, like a non-car guy's perspective, like I feel like the Subaru, like, and I've found out so much more, a very like unassuming
Swiss Army knife,
yes. Like, or even just like line of vehicles and the models and their capabilities. I think there's a lot of underestimation that goes on out there with Subarus.
Correct. So can you get into the story of like how all this started, how you guys wound up getting into Subarus? There's this guy out there, Evo, maybe some people have heard of him, and he had an amazing Subaru back in the day. So yeah, like wherever is the best place to start, I'll let you take it from here. So
the original shop is actually called Renner Motorsport, and that was owned by my uncle. And him and my dad ran it together, and they worked together building cars. And they actually started out doing Volkswagens. And,
oh, no way.
And that's, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and then, 2002, 2003, Subaru was around in America. They come in, and that's when they get involved with Subaru. So ever since they came to the States, pretty much. Then 2004, the STIs came here. And that's when stuff got more interesting. A lot of people started getting involved with it. And that's when their focus shifted from Volkswagens to Subarus. Eventually leading up to them starting to swap cars, obviously using the GC platform, which is a lighter platform. It's the first Impreza is still to this day the lightest.
Yeah, kind of like from that mid-90s time frame or so.
Right, so from when the Legacy was big, and then it's actually the Legacy and the GC, they're using the same platform.
Yeah, that's the goofy thing. Two totally different cars using the same platform.
Yep. Yeah, and a lot of it is interchangeable.
Yeah.
And then from there, they got into swapping these cars, building them, racing them. They've been, up until that point, they were racing the Volkswagens. They had Scirocco's. And then after that became Subarus. So after that started, as the industry evolved, they evolved with it, started making them faster, grippier, and now we're here.
Yeah. And that, like, in that GC chassis or that platform, that's where you get probably one of the most iconic Subarus ever built with the 22B, right? So if you're into Subarus, you've almost certainly heard of the 22B. If not, chances are, even as a kid, you might have had a poster of one on your wall and not even known it. It's like it was first intended for rally, right?
Right. That's what. It was built. Yeah. In order for them to use it for rally, they had to make the road versions so they're they have homologation.
Oh yeah.
And that's why they ended up making the 400 copies of it, which sold within 24 hours after their release. It was for their 40th anniversary, I believe. And the 22B is the holy grail. It's probably the most special Subaru that came out of Subaru. Mm-hmm. And I mean, everyone knows about it. Who's into Subarus, it's the holy grail. And then, which is why, we do replicas of those.
Yeah, yeah. And those have been super cool. Like following you guys on Instagram, seen a lot of those. And
what makes the 22B like so iconic and so cool?
I think like
it's the body of it. It's how it looks. That you look at that car and it has. You look at your normal 2.5 RS and it looks beautiful. It's a great car.
A little two-door Impreza.
Okay,
but it's narrow. And then in 1998 they released the 22B, which had huge arcs.
Okay,
and it looked beautiful.
Body fenders.
And obviously it was a 2.2 turbo car, so it was that much better than your regular RS.
Okay.
And then because of there's only 400 of them, that's why it's such a special car, because not many people have them.
Mm-hmm.
Like the scarcity.
The rarity
of that
is huge. It'd be like so us being in the gun and hunting industry. It'd be like, let's say, in order for, and this is kind of like I don't know if this has ever happened. This would be maybe a goofy hypothetical situation, but let's say in order for a gun company to release a new firearm for the military, they had to produce a certain low number for the consumer market. In order for that bigger contract that they had with the military or whatever to go through.
right.
So then like a very low select number of people got a chance at getting this super awesome, like duty grade something.
Right.
And it just becomes that much more special and rare. And like a lot of companies have had to do that, the homologation specials, where in order to qualify for a racing division, they have to make a set number for the
Like the
consumer
commercial
market. Yeah.
market,
So like Joe or Jane could go and buy one at their dealership. In
Like
theory,
it's not some
in theory,
one-off
of course.
like super duper race car.
It's why
like,
they, in order for a car to race, there has to be a production line of it. Which is why, recently, I just recently heard of it. The new Ford GT, they ended up making a production run of it, but Ford only sold it to the people that you couldn't go, even if you had all the money in the world, you couldn't go and buy it. You had to be a special person with, pretty much you have to be an influencer in order for you to be sold that car. There was contracts. If you wanted to own that car, it doesn't matter that it's, a couple million or whatever. You have to abide the contract.
Right.
So-
right. And didn't one guy sell his too?
That
and
was
that
John Cena.
John Cena?
Yeah.
John Cena just coming out of nowhere selling his Ford GT.
And they made a big deal. They actually sued him. Yeah.
Oh, they did?
They did.
Oh, because he broke a contract.
Yeah.
That's crazy. One of my favorite homologation specials is the Volvo, when they made like a 242 turbo or something like that for racing. I can't remember.
Are those the boxy ones?
Yeah, the boxy ones. And they had to make 400 of them, for the consumer market. So they made these cars and they shipped them over to the U.S. and they parked them in a parking lot just long enough for the inspectors to come by and say like, okay, yep, you guys like made these for the consumer market. You're good. Once they were done, they stripped them all down, shipped like almost all of them back, used all the parts in their race cars, and then like I think only like a very small handful of them actually even stayed alive.
And they got away with it.
Yeah, they got away with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
is insane. Well, it sounds like the more we've talked about this racing too, they probably are going to need those parts.
Yeah, because I think a lot of stuff breaks, right? That's just how it goes. But yeah, and then I mean, back then too with the when you guys are doing and you have been doing those 22B replicas and stuff like that, that was kind of like what Evo's car was first intended to be, or was his intended to be something totally different and custom? And because he had it's that two-door Impreza. It's such a tiny little car when you get up next to it.
Yeah.
And yet still it has all-wheel drive, which is just crazy.
It has everything. Evo's car is started as obviously the normal RS. Then the reason actually he ended up going to the wide body is because he ended up sideswiping the car, and he was like, "Oh, I'm not going to fix it. I'm just going to put a body kit on it." So I believe, I might be mistaken, but I believe his car was I know I am mistaken. I was going to say it was the first wide body car, but it was actually this one.
Your time attack car?
Evo proceeded to use the Aeros and body kit, put it on, and then at that point the car was still a mild build. It had 450 horsepower.
That's all. Mild.
And then he drove it every day, and it was a very nice car. Would track it occasionally, and then eventually, his power levels went up. Put a cage in it, was more track oriented. While he still drove it from time to time on the street, but at that point, the car is loud, the car is low. It's very hard on the eyes. You see it, and you see it.
Yeah,
you can't miss it. So he would occasionally drive it on the street, but it was mostly for the track.
Yeah.
And yeah, that car had evolved a lot. I mean, it went through a lot of stages of testing parts and testing builds, and went through a lot.
And he was quite a race car driver even before because he came to the U.S., right? And how did that work out? He was racing somewhere else, right?
Right. So Ivo's my uncle, and we're originally from Bulgaria, and he came here when he was I want to say 21.
Okay.
And prior to him coming here, he was doing rallycross back home in Bulgaria.
Nice. And
he came here, and rallycross isn't too big over here, especially you can't just pick up a car and go rallycross.
Okay.
And so he got into track racing at the time. Obviously, with Subarus weren't around, so he had a Scirocco. Started driving, competing, and he was amazing. He was an amazing driver. And then proceeded to compete in time attack when time attack came available in, I want to say, 08, 07, 08, when time attack started getting really big in the US. He got into that, and then did it all the way until his passing.
Yeah. And yeah, such a cool, reading up. I know you were reading up on that, Mark. It's just a cool story of how he kind of got into all that, and doing time attack and stuff like that.
For those who don't know, like myself, what is time attack?
Yeah.
Time attack is you against the clock. It's essentially qualifying. That's what it is. But it's you. Time attack is such a great sport. I mean, it's you build a car, and for the majority of time attack, it's people using their own resources, building cars. There's a lot of shops involved, but there's also a lot of individuals that are building it out of their garages. And there's very few, big teams. And it's you build a car, you push it to the absolute limit, and then you go on track and you push yourself to the absolute limit to get the perfect time, to get you're chasing every 10th.
Mm-hmm. Is it to just get to the end as fast as you can, or is there a specific perfect time you have to hit exactly on the nose?
No. It's you want to be the fastest, as fast as you can
possibly
be.
Okay.
And then time attack is big on records. So you when you go race, you want to break a record. You're not going there it's not so much for first, second, third place. I mean, obviously at the end of the day, that's how you're being awarded, but
right.
The important thing is the time.
Mm-hmm. You want to be the first of all the firsts.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah.
The first. Yeah, exactly.
Triple first.
And now you're driving the car that you guys have here. So you guys have a pretty badass time attack car here. We were just checking it out in the shop, and this thing's got, imagine the Subaru, for those of you who aren't necessarily so much into this racing, the Subaru you see on the street, and then just completely different. It's 100%. Everything is custom. Suspension, engine, transmission. You've got this crazy body kit on it, huge wing that comes even out from under the car. Yeah. It's incredible.
What is the same then?
Oh, I think didn't you say the rear subframe is the only?
Oh yeah. Currently, our subframe is the only still OEM part on that car, which is getting changed out.
So it's not at the end of it. When you're done, it's not even going to hardly be a Subaru anymore.
The only thing you're going to have is the the chassis, which some of it has been cut out from, so it's not totally original.
Yeah.
They just pried off the logo on the front and
Right. What's it like driving this thing?
Oh,
I mean,
man,
how
it's
much
the most amazing thing in the world.
You guys are putting how much to the wheels now? I know there's like different dynos.
There's a different dyno situation, but it made 690 on the Mustang dyno, and then if you translate that over to dyno jet numbers, it's roughly 760, 770 to the wheels.
My goodness. And you're still retaining all-wheel drive. I know a lot of people think of this is one of the things I'm curious to get your input on, because a lot of people think of track cars and they look at race cars, and a lot of what they know and are familiar with is rear-wheel drive. And then all-wheel drive, you throw in now the front wheels can have power sent to them. And it's just a whole... I think people get nervous about that maybe because they're like, oh, man, there's all these other mechanicals now. But that's part of what makes Subarus awesome is the all-wheel drive system.
Oh, 100%. 100%. One of the best all-wheel drive systems in the world, no questions.
Oh, man. All the Quattro fans out there are just like...
I know. Well, the Quattro is probably the best one.
Okay,
I agree with that.
The Audi Quattro, I've heard, is pretty sweet.
But, the all-wheel drive system, in terms of racing it only makes it easier.
Okay.
A lot of people, now there's, understeer and the front end's pushing. That is true. You have to work around that, but that's oftentimes it's due to, whoever's driving and not knowing when to let off the pedal in the turn, and he wants to keep it flat, and
sure,
at that point, your front end's going to start pushing, but it's easier to drive.
Okay,
with rear-wheel drive cars, you have to be very easy on the throttle. You have to be mindful that the rear end can snap on you. Front wheel drive cars are probably, in fact, the hardest to drive fast.
Yeah,
right. Is that because like the rear end would want to break loose, or
because you're only getting power sent to the front.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Your front wheels in a front wheel drive car have to do everything. They have to steer, brake, and apply power to the ground. And you can only I don't know if you look at it this way, you're more experienced than I am for sure, but I've heard a lot of the instructors I've talked to, they talk about the rule of 100%. A tire can only give, it only has 100% of what it can do to give, or its grip to give. And some of it's either going to get used steering, braking, or putting power down. So
that is correct, yeah.
If you're full on 100% power, steering and braking isn't a thing.
Yeah. And so these front-wheel drive cars, they have to be driven a certain way. Mm-hmm. Funny enough, the fastest time attack car around Buttonwillow, which is the track over here locally to us, where we have the Global Time Attack Finals, is actually a front-wheel drive car.
Interesting. That
Civic, yeah.
That thing's pretty gnarly. But the driver has probably got to be the most gnarly thing about it, right?
I think they're both pretty gnarly. I mean, in order to drive a car like that, I believe I was talking to one of the guys from the team. He said they were running 880 to the wheels, or it may even be more, because that was a while ago. And you're putting that all through front wheels, only front wheel drive.
Jeez. And it's still a 4-cylinder motor.
Yep.
My goodness. I mean, we're talking about when I had this motor out and we were working on it prior to this adventure, seeing an engine, when you actually see it out of your car, cars are big, right? You fit inside of them. They're designed to be bigger than you usually, unless you're looking like a BMW IZ or something weird like that. But when you actually boil it down, you look at the pistons and the crankshaft and all that's actually doing the work of propelling the car. It's tiny, and especially in these 4 cylinders, the size of your torso.
Yep.
And it's unbelievable when you guys are taking something like that and putting, in a Honda Civic motor is just a little inline 4. That's also pretty small. Putting that much power through that thing, that's insane.
It comes with its own problems, trying to put that much power through 4 cylinders. It's definitely not as easy as putting them through, 2JZ or, LS motor. But you deal with it, man. I mean,
yeah.
Subarus come with Subaru motors. We thought we considered, swapping motors at one point.
To something even not Subaru?
That's not, first of all, that's not what we do. Our business is strictly Subarus.
Yeah.
It's what we do, it's how we build them.
Yeah.
So we got to run a Subaru motor in it. And To be honest with you, with Subarus at least, and I think it goes for Hondas as well, up to about 500, 550 to the wheels, you can build them very reliably. Where you don't have to worry about, am I going to go to the track and I'm going to have to put it on the trailer to come back?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Throw a rod through the engine case or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
With technology is so evolved now that a 500, 550 to the wheels Subaru can be built reliably, easily.
Definitely. And a lot of the stuff I'm sure you got to do is swapping over to forged internals and stuff like that.
100%.
Right?
Yeah. Not only that, you have to go to a closed deck block. You have to use thicker head studs instead of using head bolts. So you go to half-inch head studs.
Okay.
But that's what you got to do in order to hold that power.
Yeah.
Your normal motors rated for 300, 320, if that.
Sure.
And at that point, the internal starts failing.
Yeah.
And you got to upgrade them. Even if you want to only run 400, you still got to, if you want to be reliable and you want to be safe, then you got to build the motor.
So Mark, to translate.
Yes, please.
So when you look at the engine block, that's kind of where your pistons and your rods and your crankshaft and all that, that's where like all the power is kind of being generated. Damien, you can correct me on any of this stuff too, but like, the closed deck block that you mentioned, that's a big one people talk about. Like, do you remember when our engine block was completely torn apart and we had that sitting there and you looked at the side where the pistons, you could see the tops of them, and there were like these like hollowed out sections.
Yeah, right.
Right. There, instead of having those big giant hollowed out sections, which as you can imagine allows like just I assume more flex in the engine block or something like that, or just not as much support
right, and
for the
cylinders. The cylinders, they're not supported at that point.
Yeah.
They can crack.
Yeah, so you guys, when you go to a closed deck, you kind of fill that in. You like brace it, and then forged internals are just like cast versus forged. We talk about like like a forged barrel, in a rifle is more, strong or whatever than something that isn't forged, for example. Like forged is better, so it can just hold up to the power better. Right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
Cool. I think I'm tracking.
All right.
Is there something special about these Subaru motors that like kind of allows them to do the things that you guys are doing to them?
I wouldn't say it has anything special that other motors don't. You can make power out of any motor if you want. Obviously there's certain motors that are better designed for that stuff, but out of the factory, that motor is not meant to push that much power, which is why we have to do all this extra stuff in order to actually run that power.
Gotcha.
In fact, if anything, it's less superior to other motors because you have two heads. You split the short block right down the middle, and then you have two heads on the side. Those are just weak points that you have to deal with. With Evo, with Evos, with Hondas, JZs, they have the block and they have the head on top, and it's Let's say something happened and you wanted to do a head gasket job. It's that much easier. With the Subarus, you have to pull the motor out. You have to
say you don't even have to pull the motor. Jesus, what were we doing getting this thing? I had to pull the whole motor on this thing.
No, for the Subarus?
Yeah.
No, you have to pull it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying to Mark. I was like, why did we get a Subaru? I had to pull the whole dang motor here, and we had limited time.
Because that probably sounded like more fun to you, Jim.
It did. But that boxer motor that people talk about, that's also kind of one of the unique things about Subaru. Do you think, is the boxer motor, I know people talk about the balance, the low center of gravity. Is that part of the reason why you like Subarus, or is the main reason you guys like Subarus and got into them, is it the all-wheel drive, or is it just
it's the whole package?
The whole package.
Now,
the chassis.
I got into Subarus because my family was into Subarus as I was growing up. Mm-hmm. My dad, he's been into Subarus ever since they came out on the market, ever since he saw that 22B.
Yeah.
So naturally, he always wanted one, and then he got him and my uncle. They got Subarus. They started messing around with them. I kind of grandfathered into that. But it's not just one thing about the car. The whole car is a great package, which is it makes it hard for you not to love it. It's not only the all-wheel drive system, not only the motor. It's the feel of the car. It's the history behind it. The people like. It's what you can do with them. It's the entire industry that's behind this brand that that's so heavily supported. It's the community also. It's Subaru guys, hands down, the nicest guys ever. You see a Subaru driving down the street, you see, and you're in a Subaru, You bet that you're gonna say hi to each other. You know, it's the nicest community. So there's not one thing that you do.
Cool.
It's that gets you into Subarus. It's the whole thing.
That's cool. Yeah, we were just perusing around Instagram there for a bit, and I started stumbling across more and more other dudes out there that are off-roading Subaru Foresters and stuff like that. Started hitting them up on Instagram, and a lot of them just get like stoked if they see other people doing Subarus.
Yeah.
You know, it seems like a lot of times people. Like the thing I've noticed about people who drive Subarus is like they know they drive a Subaru. Like sometimes I've met people where it's like, oh, what kind of car do you drive? And they're like, I can't even remember. You know, or they're kind of like, I drive like a Mazda, or you know, like I drive like a Honda or something. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Like what kind? It's like the regular one, I guess. You know, but like people drive a Subaru, they're like, oh, I drive an Outback, or you know, like I drive.
They take pride in it.
They do.
Yeah.
They do. Yeah,
There
like
is.
it.
I mean, it does seem like anybody you talk to, like they have like kind of like a cult following, and like if you're into it, you're into it. And it's funny you talk about like, I get in a wave like with my '79 Scout. Like you cannot pass a Scout without.
Oh, it's impossible. Yeah, especially something like that. That's a little bit more rare. You don't see it as often. And like the nice thing that I was thinking too when we picked this vehicle out, I mentioned on an earlier podcast in this series, but you know, like with like Subarus, they're kind of complicated in that they have the boxer motor and they have the all-wheel drive system, but also like when you actually get to taking one apart, they're actually not that bad. Things are pretty easy to get to, you know, aside from, you know, the motor. It's like practically if you want to change spark plugs, you almost have to pull the motor unless you have tiny hands.
Yeah.
But, you know, it seemed like something where parts are pretty readily available. Like there was all kinds of cars that I thought were cool when we were looking for one. Like I mentioned to Mark, the Mitsubishi Montero would have been pretty sweet. You know, something like one of those old Suzuki Grand Vitaras would have been pretty sweet. But imagine going around and being like, oh, shoot, something broke. Where am I going to find a part for that anymore? It's like Mitsubishi doesn't make a Montero anymore. Suzuki isn't even in the U.S. anymore. You know, little things like that. You'd end up, but like Subarus are everywhere.
No, yeah, the support system for these cars is great. I mean, you can find parts from pretty much anywhere. Mm-hmm. But you know, I really like how you called it. You know, it's pretty much a Swiss knife. It's the Swiss knife of cars.
Yeah,
because they have models for everything. You can do anything with that car.
It's true.
Anything. There is not a thing you can't do.
I saw that Forester do some things this last week, Jim.
You did, yeah. Like off-roader, got it. Rally car on gravel, got it. Freaking awesome track car, like time attack, crazy aero kit, big fat tires, got it.
Yep.
Daily driver.
If you whether you have, you know, let's just pick the STI for example. Whether you have a bone stock STI and you want to daily drive it every day, not have it be crazy, it's still a super fun car. Mm-hmm. Should you want some extra power in that car and still daily drive it? Not a problem. If you want a lot of power, that's also not a problem. You can still daily drive it. I mean, we know we have people doing that. Should you want to go traveling and, you know, off-roading or, you know, go have an adventure, that's the perfect car. Mm-hmm. Because you're not going to get stuck anywhere. You can go anywhere. You can go camping in it. You can go to the mountains. Do you want a race car? No problem.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know a guy?
I know a guy. You know, rally cars, anything.
Man, that rally seems to be really where like Subaru started to get a lot of its fame. And it's kind of, you talk about the community. One of the things I think is so funny about Subarus is their community in times is completely polarizing. Because like you'll see like boy racers, you'll see freaking, you know, rally guys, off-road guys, whatever, that are total petrol heads. They just want to hear loud motors and just go and be extreme. And then on the other side of things, you've got like Subaru in their commercials where everybody's hugging trees and going around and like, you know, like kissing Tweety birds and stuff. And like both those kinds of peoples are nuts about Subaru.
Right, yeah.
Which is funny. But like the rally thing, I feel like was one where probably before, people who got Subarus before, like Subaru really got it big into rally, were probably almost kind of like, actually, I was talking to a guy at our shop locally, and he said that one of his buddies, he lived up north Wisconsin, where everybody drove, it was like Ford, Chevy, Dodge, or get out. And that's what he said. That's what he said the phrase was. It was Ford, Chevy, Dodge, or get out. And this dude up there got a Subaru Brat way back in the day because he thought it was like kind of sweet because it was sweet. Yeah. And he said people would literally run him off the road. Like they would actually try and run him off the road. So he had to get rid of it and get.
Doesn't sound very nice at all.
It's terrible. Anyway, all you up northerners there in Wisconsin,
yeah, be nice.
Yeah. Anyway, this was way back in the day. I don't know where it was exactly up north, but
hopefully times have changed, Jim.
Hopefully so. But anyway, it's like then they got it big into the rally thing. You had guys like Colin McRae driving a badass Legacy in the 22B, stuff like that, and yeah, then all of a sudden, like everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, these Subarus can do anything."
That's why they became so notorious, because of rallying.
Yeah.
And eventually people saw they can do other things with it.
Yeah.
And then these Outbacks and these Foresters are really reliable, and they can get me anywhere. Oh, that's awesome.
It's true.
And people started buying a lot of them and doing stuff with them. And truthfully, with a Forester and Outback, what can't you do? It gets you home, from work. You want to travel, you want to off-road. It's huge. You can, move your whole house with it if you need it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And we pretty much did that.
Yeah. It's a great car. And the good thing is that they're reliable.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they build some cars and they have problems with them. Which, it happens with, high horsepower Subarus. But if it's not a high horsepower Subaru, very reliable car. Mm-hmm. Very reliable.
Well, you were talking earlier about like some of the mileage that folks are getting out of these things. Like it seems
300,000 is like.
We have customers with over 300,000 miles on them.
That's just astronomical.
That is. It's pretty crazy. Yeah, to think about going that far on one car. Our car on the chassis right now, of course, we put in the new rebuilt motor, but on the chassis, we've got 240,000 miles now. Yeah, and like when we got it, the car ran. Like it drove. Mm-hmm. I was just sort of like, well, we got to drive all the way to Arizona. And you don't probably know this. I don't think I told you this because I wanted you to take us seriously. But our last Podventure.
There's a lot we haven't revealed.
Our last Podventure, the vehicle didn't really make it. It was a boat, and it didn't make it. So I really wanted to make sure we were going to make it this time. So didn't want to just go on that original motor. But yeah, they do. They go, and they go. What is it that so let's say somebody out there listening, they've got a Subaru, right? Or whatever really vehicle it is. It doesn't have to be a Subaru, I
think there's a lot of people that they don't even know what they have and they have a Subaru.
Yeah, exactly. But let's say people do want to start kind of going down the modification route, I've seen people modify cars and they do a really amazing job. I've seen garage, total just, in a single car garage, people make custom rigs that are just absolutely immaculate and incredible. I've also seen people, even in the nicest of garages, go and try and modify a car and you're like, why did you do that? You literally ruined it. What are things that you want to start looking at when you're modifying a vehicle? First, I'm sure you have to figure out what you want to do with it. But like a Subaru, for example, depending on what you want to do with it, are you going to start first looking at suspension? Do you first start looking at reliability? Do you first start looking at, whatever?
Like you said, that's it. It all comes down to what you want to do with the car. Mm-hmm. If you think the stock power is enough, then worry about other things: handling, suspension, brakes if needed. Mm-hmm. If you want power, I always tell people is that you need to know what you want so that you don't have to do it twice.
Yeah.
So you want power, decide. Do you want, 350, 450, 550? How much power do you want? Mm-hmm. In order for you to not spend your money twice.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, if someone's out there looking to do a build, go to your local Subaru shop. Not the dealership, a Subaru shop that builds cars.
Yeah, somebody like you guys. Because the dealership will say, no, don't touch it.
Yes, exactly. And
but I'll show you this new model.
Yeah, exactly. And then find out what the best way to go about it is. Because they probably know better. If you haven't built a Subaru, then a shop that has probably knows better. And they can steer in the right direction.
Yeah.
Because... I've had customers to where they come and they tell me, okay, well, I want to do 450. I want to have 450 to the wheels. That's fine. We can do that. But you need to know that's what you want because eventually these people come back and they're like, well, I want a little bit more.
Yeah.
But we built, cool. This motor is rated for, about, 420 to 450 to the wheels. You putting on more power now will... take the reliability factor out of it.
Yeah.
and at that point it becomes pointless. So first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you have a clear plan as to what you're doing.
Okay.
The most common thing I think is people throw bolt-ons. The cars get a pretty good jump in power. They become really fun, and then they start messing with suspension, and that's when the car becomes great.
Yeah.
Great track car. It can be a daily driven car. Pretty much anything.
Yeah, and like you said, talking to a local Subaru shop or something is super advantageous. Like I was talking with you a little bit throughout the process of this thing. I mean, you're probably laughing as you read some texts. You're like, "What is this guy doing?" I was actually going to ask, did you actually think we were going to make it?
No, I didn't have doubts as to if we're going to make it or not, because you rebuild the motor and then you made sure that it ran fine first before you took it on a trip. So no, I wasn't worried about that.
Okay, all right, sweet.
Oh,
All right.
that
A
makes-
vote of confidence.
That makes two of us then.
Right. But like we just got down here, and for example, like literally before we were podcasting, we were talking about the lift kit we installed, and I mentioned that we put spacers on the struts and spacers on the trailing arms, and then you're like, well, did you space out the subframe too to make all the geometry go back to normal? And that was where I had a little bit of a right about that kind of moment. We sort of did the route where, in a typical sort of home mechanic kind of way, it was like, oh, I want a lift kit? Sure, lift it. Boom, it's lifted, done. And little did I know, and I did know because I could see it, but we sort of just ran out of time, But looking at it, all the geometry has changed. My ball joints, my inner tie rods, my outer tie rods, my control arm is stressed, my sway bar end links are stressed, my axles are stressed, CVs are stressed, and we made it here.
Yeah,
But you were kind of mentioning, you're like, well, yeah, you made it. Like 2 inches is a pretty good lift. It's probably a ticking time bomb, though. Like your axles are probably gonna.
they're probably gonna struggle a little bit.
Yeah,
but yeah, man. I mean, you actually surprised me, to be honest. You rebuilt your own motor. That's pretty great. And not a lot of people tackle that with Subarus. With other motors, a lot of people have. But with Subarus, it's a little bit sketchier. So you should give yourself a pat on the back.
Oh, cool.
No,
Appreciate that.
I
I'll do
told
that.
Jim that too, man. I think that might have even been yesterday. I'm like, dude, I'm like, you should be really proud. Like, this is like a big. I mean, I basically had nothing to do with this besides listening to Jim talk about it and be like, drive it over. Like, hey, we did this. I'm like, oh, sweet.
Right.
I don't know why you keep using the word we, but
It was a ton of fun. I got to say, like, again, for anybody out there thinking about doing it, I suppose I was kind of a car nerd going into this, so I sort of knew routes to go and things to ask, questions to ask, and things like that. But when you actually do something like this, it is a super awesome experience. We put 2,000 miles. Actually, you also include the 500 miles we did to break it in before we came to make sure it actually worked. But 2,500 miles on this new thing. And it actually works. And you're sitting there probably thinking like, oh my gosh, with that lift kit, I can't believe your axles are still good. But it is pretty cool. And to be able to do that is pretty neat. But I couldn't help but think to myself, like one thing we've talked about, and again, kind of relating back to our industry quite a bit, is the firearms industry. So I've built. We're in California here, so I hope nobody jumps in against me for talking about guns right now. But I've built AR-15s before, and you build one, you can do it in your house, or whatever, in your shop, in your basement, wherever. You put it together, and you're like, sweet, and it runs and it works, and you're like, this is awesome. This is as good as it gets. I use really good components. And then all of a sudden, you go out and you buy one that was already built by a shop, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is what it could be.
right.
And these are the times where I'm thinking it applies to so many things, but when somebody comes to a shop like you guys, there's what they can do in their garage. And some people maybe they used to own a shop like you guys did, so they can actually do that stuff maybe in their own garage. They got all that experience. But we're talking average Joes and Janes here, they can do stuff in their garage, but then going to somebody like you guys, it just comes out so much like it was almost destined that way from the factory. I
can just tell, like I said, dude, total outsider, but the level of precision and perfection
and just understanding of, if I do that, this will happen, this will happen, this will happen. When I was working on this thing, there were so many times where I'm like, oh, this needs to happen. I'll do that. And I didn't think 5 steps ahead. So I do it, and I'm like, I did it wrong because now this is wrong, and I have to take everything apart again. And then it's like, okay, so now I know if I do this, this will happen. So I have to do it this way. So, okay, I did that. And now I did that. Ha, good. Oh, wait, shoot. Now this next step is wrong. Okay, I got to take everything apart again. So that's part of the reason it took 5 months.
It's not like A affects B. It's like A affects A, B, C, D.
Exactly.
You guys know all these things, you know. And then meanwhile, too, we just walked around the shop out there. We're looking at cars where you're even doing things with the body. Like, you're literally cutting apart the chassis, like the part of the car that gave it even structure and allows it to not just fold on the road. And you know, you're blending in body panels. You're adding, you know, there's roll cages and stuff like that. I mean, it's incredible what you guys can do.
It's definitely better but for people, it's easier to take it to a shop than to try to figure it out themselves, because it will take a lot of time. You know, if you haven't done it, there's a lot of people that just want to learn, which is great, and they do it. At least, you know, when they do it, a lot of them do that, where they take it to us and, can you please go over the car? Yeah. And, you know, we go over the car. The car's good. It's good. If it's not, we fix whatever is not fixed. But ultimately, giving it to someone who has a little bit of experience helps. You know, the car's going to turn out a little bit better. Especially, you know, when it comes down to like normal stuff, like maybe an engine rebuild on an NA, like the Forester. That may be okay because you're not really doing any custom work. Everything is already pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I was shopping for, you know, some parts. Like, I got some parts from the dealership. I got some parts from the guy at the local shop or whatever. It all has been designed from the factory to just bolt up. You know, like it works. You don't have to worry about clearances or like, oh, am I going to run into my headers or am I going to run into, you know, whatever? Are these brakes going to clear the wheels?
You weren't modifying. You were just...
No, I was doing what was designed to go on a factory where they're pumping out thousands of these, you know.
And that's where the tricky part is when you start modifying it. And that's where you really want to take it to a shop where they've had experience. If you don't personally have an experience, then you have to take it to a shop because there's a lot to it. You know, there's a lot of guys that have previous experiences from other cars and everything, and that definitely helps, and a lot of them can do that. But taking it to a shop where you know what's going to be happening, or the guys that are doing it know what's going to happen, what you need, is where everything, when it's worth it. That's when it justifies your money.
Yeah. One of the most incredible things that I think shops do, and this isn't to take away from like engine rebuilds and bumping up a bunch of power out of an engine or whatever, but one of the things that I think is absolutely incredible is like suspension, because you can have the most powerful car in the world and it can lose to a far less powerful car that's just set up properly. I'm talking about mostly on a track, obviously not like a drag race or anything like that, but on a track like you guys go to Button Wheel or something like that, the handling of a vehicle and how it performs, like how it steers, how it, you know, body roll and how, you know, the camber, caster, all these things. It's huge.
Handling and suspension is everything. It's far more important than the power.
Yeah. And when these people go in like you guys do and you make a car with, you know, I was looking at your Time Attack car. You guys have custom control arms that are like, you know, I mean, a lot of times I looked at our control arms. They look like a giant, you know, like moon. Like, what is it? DreamWorks. DreamWorks has the moon where the guy's fishing off.
Yeah.
Our control arm kind of looks like that moon.
Okay.
And a crescent moon. That's what it is. Big old honking thing, and it's got a ball joint on the end or whatever. They make a bazillion of them and bolt them up to every Subaru that comes down the line. You guys have these like fully adjustable like tube control arms and like tie rods and all this stuff. Like, there's a lot of geometry that has to go into that. Like, you're connecting points in space, and they call it a suspension because the car, without a suspension, the car just sits on the ground. It doesn't go anywhere, you know? And to do all that stuff, and then once you even get the geometry right of everything, like where you have to connect your control arms and all these other things, it's like then you have to dial it in. You have to have, you know, like you got to go in and some of your pictures on Instagram, you got the guy with the strings, which is super cool when they're aligning it and everything. It's crazy.
So yeah, all that is so important, especially, you know, if you have a higher grade suspension, setting it up is so important. And, you know, it takes a while setting up that. You have to go to multiple test days in order for you to be able to get the right settings. The alignment is so important as well.
Well, then you have to know what you're feeling when you're testing too. Like, you know, if you don't know, like I wouldn't know the difference. Like, I mean, I might be able to feel a feel a difference, but I wouldn't necessarily know maybe which one is better or what you're looking for. Like, oh, we got it right, you know?
Well, that's right. If you have a little bit of experience and, you started out with more normal cars, you started on a car with stock suspension, then you went to a car with, grade 1 coilovers and then you upgrade it. And you've seen the differences throughout, from the start of your career and everything.
Yeah.
At that point, you'll be able to understand what all these small changes make. Mm-hmm. But
you guys make a small tweak and you can immediately see like tenths of seconds come off or get put back on your time and your in time attack, right? What do you guys like? You guys do that at the track? Like you're just tweaking stuff a lot, like when you go.
Yeah,
out
for example, at the last race that we were at, we were tweaking the suspension because this is still a very new car to us. When this car was finished, absolutely everything on the car was brand new. Nothing was tested. Everything was new. So the car, even though it's been about a year now, we've been fighting some problems. It's we're still learning it. We're still testing the car. We're still tweaking it. And at the last race, we tweaked the suspension here and there, and it made a huge difference. Just one day of testing, huge difference.
Wow.
But that's what you got to do.
Yeah.
With every car that you want to compete with, or even if it's not a competition, for you to just have good handling, you have to do that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. Now let's say so for the guy out there who's listening to this because they've been listening to a hunting, Podventure thus far, so they may be thinking about the forest or outback route, and less maybe like a super time attack route. Maybe they are at the same time because it's a great thing. But let's say you're talking about like an off-road suspension. So what we have now, and this is a little bit what we were alluding to earlier, what we have now is Subarus don't get lifted the same way like dudes lift their big Fords or whatever, their big trucks and whatnot. Those guys just put bigger coil springs on, and then they put like a different shock on, and then it's like, okay, the thing's lifted, These, there's not like a ton of those different coil and shock options. They're also using a McPherson style where it's sort of a coil over, right? And so instead, actually, I know what we did is we went to like strut top spacers. So we just kept the stock suspension, put a spacer on the top to almost kind of like push the car a little bit up off the wheels and whatnot.
Yeah.
To get that lift. We put on, because I knew Mark over here is a clinical overpacker, I put on like King heavy duty springs instead of using the OEM ones because I didn't want a bunch of squat, But is that basically kind of like, and then you also mentioned there's these subframe spacers, which we probably should put in too, to sort of, if you can imagine, if you lift everything up and then that geometry gets changed. You gotta let like your engine
same way
as
the you gotta adjust for the control arms.
Yeah.
And all that. It's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just gotta accommodate the top half and the bottom half.
Right. Is that pretty much like the way to go with lifting Subarus and kind of making them?
It's the most common way.
Yeah.
And then I mean, a lot of people do that, and so far everyone's doing good.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously if you want to go to like a crazy rally suspension, it's going to cost you 30, 40, 50 grand. You could, but why do it? If you're not rallying, you know.
When this thing did perfectly fine. Oh, one thing I was just going to ask you about too, and this is literally genuinely, I was asking for our Subaru, but I'm curious what you'd say too for the listeners out there that are just maybe car nerds or whatever, curious. Like one thing people put in when they're talking about off-roading is lockers in differential. So like on your typical four-wheel drive, you've got a transfer case, then you've got two diffs, front and rear, one each. And then on Subarus, especially like I know ours with the manual transmission, I think the automatic is the same. Maybe there's 3 diffs,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so like people will talk about using lockers because if you get stuck and one wheel is spinning and the other one isn't, then you're never going to get traction to the one that actually has grip. Do Subarus, like a Forester, for example, do they have lockers in them or like a limited slip almost, or should we install lockers or something like that, or can you even?
Well, you can. It's just you can put an LSD in it, but it would have to be like the racing one that we have in the car, which wouldn't be too fun to drive as a daily.
Okay.
Now, if you're strictly off-roading, then yeah, it's cool. You can do that. But for example, if you have a center, let's say just a center LSD, and you want to make a 90-degree turn because it's always active. It's no longer like the STIs have the driver-controlled center diff, where you can put it. You can leave it open and lock it whenever you need it. Yours is always open.
Okay.
Right? So, but when you put the LSD, it's constantly locked. So every time you go in for a tighter turn, it's going to start binding in because it's lower speed. You're really going to feel it.
Yeah.
Now on
That's
track,
kind of like you feel that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Like would that be similar? Like when I have my truck in 4-wheel drive and I go and turn into like a tight parking spot.
Same deal. Because a transfer case is just almost like a locked center diff. Yeah.
And then that's why we were talking about swapping over to 6-speed.
Mm-hmm.
If you end up doing a JDM STI transmission, they already have an LSD in the center that you don't need to control.
Oh, you don't?
No.
Is that always locked, or is that one kind of like sometimes open and locked if you need it? Or
yeah, I'm not sure exactly, but it's not always locked because you can obviously do your 90 degrees U-turn.
Right, they made it to kind of be on a street
If you do the USDM 6-speed swap, you can do there's this thing called DCD Pro, and because the USDM transmissions, they have the DCD. When you put it on whatever car, and you can wire in a DCD Pro, which allows you to control the center diff in that 6-speed. So you can leave it open, you can lock it, you can fully lock it, you can lock it just a little bit, whatever you want. So that's one option that's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool, for sure.
So for those of you that want to have DCD Pro, or they have DCCD, that's one option to do it.
Driver controlled center diff, right?
Yeah. If you're racing, then you can just put like a Cusco LSD, and it'll change everything.
Yeah. So when you're racing, the point of a blocking your diffs, because that I think to somebody who's used to just hearing about people locking diffs when they're off road, to hear about using that then in a racing application is kind of weird. Like, how does it actually?
Well, to kind of simplify it, to give you an example, is when the car, for example, our car has Cusco all 3 diffs, so front, center, and rear.
Oh shoot, all 3.
So all 3 of them, and the car feels as if it's on rails.
Okay.
You tell the car to turn in, the car turns in where you tell it to turn in. When I was a little bit younger, I had just started tracking and racing. I noticed that I used to have a 2008 STI, and that's what I was competing with. And obviously that had a DCD Pro. And I would lock it every single time. One time I forgot to lock it. And I went out on track, and man, the car feels very, very squirmy, very, very loose in the turns. And then I looked at the video, and then I realized that I turned the car off, and then turned it back on, and didn't lock my diff.
Okay.
And I was like, there you go. Well, that's how much of a difference this makes.
So you get kind of like because when it locks it, it's keeping, like in the center diff, for example, it's keeping the front and the rear wheels spinning at the same speed.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Because otherwise, if they weren't and you turned in, then they would start spinning at different speeds. It just starts getting a little bit.
Yeah, it's not as planted anymore.
Yeah.
And that's, we were talking about handling and suspension, and a lot of people don't realize how important the differentials are, and how much it affects your control over the car.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah. Would you make a differential upgrade over a suspension upgrade, or suspension upgrade over a differential?
No, suspension is going to have to come first.
Okay.
And eventually when...
Are you asking for a friend, Jim?
Yeah, buddy. Tim.
Suspension would have to go first, just because even if you have the diffs, the car's going to roll.
Yeah.
So you want to control that first.
Okay. Got it. That makes sense. Mark, do you feel yourself turning it? So this is one of the other things for the listeners out there. So Mark has had to endure, now we're on like a week that we've been gone, and you've had to endure me talking about cars nonstop. And Mark's thinking about making an Overlander himself. Like, it's similar to the Forester that we have out there. Thinking about it. He's been looking at, Land Cruisers and stuff like that. But
Thank goodness my wife doesn't listen to this.
I've heard Mark talk more. There's actually been times in the car where, like, I could talk his ear off the entire way down to Arizona and to LA then about cars. But I was like, you know what? I'll spare him. I know Mark's not as into cars as I am. But I've heard him talk about cars almost as much as I have. He brings up every car we pass by. Oh, look at that. Look at that Tacoma. Look at that Subaru right there. Look at that, you know?
Yeah, man. For lack of a better term, the wheels are turning. And I think it's almost through osmosis because, you bring up every car that drives by too, and you're like, oh, there's that one. And like you get like a complete 20-second history until the next car passes by. Or like there'll be like one, oh, that's this car, but it's got this on it, you know, and then just this trip, man, and seeing the man, how darn well the Sub did. Like it exceeded any expectation that I could have had or preconception. Like and I've said it probably a million times throughout this process, but when I got the text from Jim, he goes, "Hey, we just won a $1,200 Subaru off eBay." I was just like, oh my gosh. Like the trip that Jim was talking about before this one, I was like, we can't do this again. Like we can't
we can't get
like
stranded
this,
again.
it has to work this time, you know? But it did. And it was just like, I mean, we took that thing on some gnarly stuff, no problems. And I love trucks. I'm a truck guy, right? But so I ended up driving
There's Baja for that.
we got split up, whatever. I ended up driving like a truck, and I was like, man, dude, it's like the Sub, I think it handles better.
It's way smooth. Everybody who got in
it was way smooth.
So
like,
there was
the truck
like,
was like, and I was like, the Sub
Yeah.
was just like, I was like, oh, like it made me like appreciate even more some of the terrain that we were on. I'm like, oh, this is actually maybe a little bit more extreme than I even thought it was when we were in the Sub.
because there was some trucks and there was a Jeep out there. And everybody who got into those cars and then got into the Subaru was like, oh my gosh, it's so much smoother. They just couldn't believe it. I feel like that's probably chalked up to the independent suspension compared to like solid axles in some of those cars.
That's one thing. But man, these cars don't get enough credit as to how good they are.
No way.
It can do anything in them and do it well.
Yeah.
Do it well.
And that's
Yeah, it's not like you can get by with it thing. It's like, no, it excels.
Yeah.
Right. And that was kind of one of the things I know, like at first we were talking about, like the Forester is a pretty cool one because I've seen people with Foresters on track. It's got a high center of gravity. There's better ones out there, but I've seen them with them on track. Even Subaru did some sweet like Japanese domestic ones that were like the Forester STIs and stuff.
Yeah.
And like I've seen Foresters do rally. I've seen Foresters do off-road. We've done it, you know, but yeah, it's crazy.
Everything. And then you mentioned the Baja. You know, that looks like a truck. It's essentially an Outback with a cut off trunk.
So I can have both.
It's pretty much all based on the same platform.
And we actually have a customer who has a track Baja, which just
serious?
Yeah.
Is it that orange one?
It's the orange one, yes.
Yeah, on
and
your
he
Instagram
tracks
page?
it. It's it makes a good amount of power. It's awesome. There's nothing you can't do. And then he can go off roading next week if he wants.
You can do everything, Mark.
The Swiss Army knife.
Did you see some of the modifications we made when we drove it up?
I saw the lights.
Sent you some pictures.
I saw the lights, and then the picture that you sent
and
me.
there's a solar panels. And one thing, the one that I was probably most proud of was the day before we left, I wired up a push button start.
Oh,
so now if you if you have it in run and you're stuck on like a hill, and I was like, I don't want to have to burn our clutch. Like we're gonna be stranded in the middle of the desert if I burn our clutch, like trying to get up a hill or something like that. If we get stuck ever, but you switch it to run and then you hold the button down and the starter motor gets you going. You give it a little gas and it just gets right out. So that was my pride and joy last minute
coup de grace before our
modification.
departure.
Yeah. So you'll see that if you see a button down there, well, it's except for everybody's reference too. We're gonna drop it off with these guys here. There's a few more things. They're gonna check it over, probably do a few things to make sure that
maybe add some spacers. You can get by with them for 25 or without them.
Without them for about 2,500 miles, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if we're just like super lucky, like whatever. But if you notice, there's a big button underneath the dash. That's what that is.
okay.
So it's not self-destruct.
You put it underneath the dash.
I did. I put it like it's like right.
No
next
one's
to your
stealing
left
that
knee.
car.
Exactly. I also put like the light controllers down by the right knee because I wanted everything on top. You know, like some people they drive around, they got that like their big Cobb access port like right in the windshield.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I know your car has expensive parts in it. But Subs are cool, man.
This has been it.
There's like you were pretty much destined to love Subarus.
I was, yeah.
But like
Me personally,
but now
yes.
you do, and you're like, if you didn't drive a Subaru, so obviously I noticed you're racing a Subaru and you're daily driving a Subaru. But if you didn't, what would you be driving? Just out of pure curiosity.
Man, my other car that I love, and it would have to be the Porsche. Like that's what I think is probably the next best thing.
Yeah. That's crazy. Subarus and Porsche mentioned the same sentence.
It's always like that.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man. It's just if I didn't care for what I'm driving, I would probably choose that.
Yeah.
And it's obviously, we're talking about the 911s. Because that car is amazing.
Yeah.
Granted, the cost of it is pretty high up there, but
Yeah.
that would have to be it.
When you consider what you can purchase a Subaru for, and you consider what you can purchase a Porsche for.
Yeah. I mean, by no means is building a Subaru cheap.
That's true.
But let's put it like that. You put the same amount of money in a Subaru, the Porsche cost, the Subaru's gonna smoke it.
Serious, you think? Yeah.
100%.
That's awesome.
No doubt about that.
That's awesome. Do you ever go over to the Porsche experience and like race those guys?
No, it's so what is across the street is the experience center, and essentially you go in and you pay them a bunch of money, and you get to drive around whatever car you want with an instructor. And then they have two slopes, one simulating ice, I believe, and the other simulating water, and they teach you how to control your car. But actually, we got to check out if they're still open. You guys should totally go across the street if you have the time, because inside is amazing. It's like a museum.
Oh, really?
And that first portion of the building is the Porsche Motorsports division, where they actually build the Cup cars.
Oh, no way. They do that here?
Yeah.
Huh.
Oh, wow.
It's pretty cool.
Dude, that is cool. There's a lot of LA is like a hub for racing and automotive, even dating back to Carroll Shelby days, right? Like all that stuff. Is that right over here too?
We can walk there if you want.
What? No way. Yeah. Are you serious?
Yeah, it's right. It's right across. So it's this next street over.
So this is like even right here, even within LA, is like Motorsports Central.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of racing shops and racing places in the area.
That's cool. Yeah.
That's wild.
And when you drive around the street too, like you drive around town in Wisconsin, and every car is either like 2010 or newer, or if it's older, it's probably got rust all over it.
Right.
And, and you're like, that thing's really hanging on by a thread. You drive around the streets out here, though, you see a 1980 whatever, and it's like looking immaculate, not a spot of rust on it, and you would think it's almost like a brand new car.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I mean, people here really preserve their cars. They try
do.
to.
They do.
And then also, you get your people that just love old cars, and no matter what, they're gonna drive that old car because that's what they want, and that's why I have the 22B that I'm building, is because I look at that car, I'm like, this car is perfect. There's nothing I would change about this car. And then the cool thing is, with those 22Bs, that I get to build it any way I want.
Yeah.
And that's why other people they have the same thing. They people drive 70s, 80s cars that are the American muscles, and a lot of people are like, well, why would I drive a new car when I can drive that? Right.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And, I'm kind of the same way. I think about the car. Like, there's nothing else that I want.
What's it like for you guys now? So like being in the racing industry and like automotive industry, and then you see now they got Teslas and electric and Formula E and all that stuff coming out. It's like when I see that stuff, I'm like gag.
Not a fan.
Yeah.
Definitely. I don't think any one of us is a fan, because I think it's cool, that there is the option. It's just that now they're trying to race them is what's annoying.
Yeah.
They're fast. That's for sure. That's for damn sure.
Oh, yeah.
They're fast. All that torque.
Instant.
But I don't know, man. You see a lot of, I've seen a lot of Teslas on tow trucks.
No way, really?
Yeah, I mean, especially coming down from they attempted to travel somewhere, the battery runs out.
Oh,
Oh,
right. You try and push that boundary a little bit.
Yeah, and that's what I don't like about Tesla is the range,
Yeah.
and then how much time you have to spend in order to charge
You
it.
got to kind of sit around. We got stuck in one place on our way here. I got to say, well, anyway, I won't say actually where it was, but we got stuck in one place where we were at a gas station. I was very glad that it only took about 2 minutes to fill up our gas tank. We could get out of there because it was like if we would have had to sit around, plug in our car, and wait for 25 minutes. I'm pretty sure, like, I don't know. You'd find like
it was Sketch Factor 12.
Sketch
Like,
Factor. Somebody
it
would be
was-
wearing a sweatshirt man out of our eyelashes. Or something like that. It's super weird.
Yeah, I watched, or actually, I listened to Matt Farrell on Joe Rogan's podcast, and they were talking about that. And I think Matt Farrell was saying how he was testing a Tesla, went to the canyons, and he was having fun up and down, and then all of a sudden he looks down and he's like, "Oh, I have only this much battery left. I got to go."
Oh shoot!
That's what
Yeah.
see, that's the not fun part of it.
Yeah.
You're limited. With these cars, with normal cars, we have gas stations everywhere. So
Yeah, you just fill up. And
we
go
don't
back
even
at
think
it.
about that. I don't think, can I make it over there? If I fill up here? Like, I'm not really sure if I can.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure the support system for these cars is going to get better over time, and
Yeah.
it's going to keep evolving. But right now, it's just not good enough yet,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
I think my biggest thing is like okay, everybody talks about and they brag on the numbers that like a Tesla. We're picking on them right now. Elon, sorry, if you listen to this podcast. But anyway, they brag.
I think he has enough money to have us killed. By the way,
they
Jim.
brag about Okay, I get. Hey, if it wasn't that place we stopped for gas that killed us, it's Elon. Listening to this podcast is going to kill us. But
I think we survived the most dangerous portion.
we did. They brag about the numbers those things put up, right? And I think to myself, like, okay, so you guys, we've talked about horsepower numbers. I'm sure you guys, there's like 0 to 60 numbers out there and whatnot. But like when you get into a car and you sit down and you're driving, and there's time attack numbers and all that stuff too, which matter. But like when you're getting into a car to enjoy it, not necessarily like beat the clock or whatever, and you step on the gas, the last thing I ever think about is, how many seconds is it taking me to get to 60?
Yeah.
It's just like, is this freaking fun or not? Like, do I feel like I got thrown back in my seat when I hit that corner? Did I feel like gravity and I feel the suspension moving and like soaking up the road or whatever? Like all these things, numbers of what's happening, like actually happening, are the last thing to hit my mind,
Yeah.
Like you can have, like, people keep trying to have fun on paper. It's like, you can't have fun on paper.
2.6 seconds,
Right.
2.8.
I don't care. 2.6 seconds. I was like, I've been in a car that goes 0 to 60 in less than 4 seconds before. And it's like, I think if I would have gone any faster, I don't know if I would have been having any more or less fun. It just, either way, it's fast.
To them, it's just their marketing strategy at that point. They're going to tell you, okay, this car's this fast. That means it's really fast.
Right.
In reality,
Right.
It's not exactly like that because, you can go step in a lightweight car that doesn't have the same amount of power that, these guys are claiming, but
Yeah.
it's going to be so much fun
And then
because
there's-
it's light.
And then there's the sound that they make too. I've been in a Tesla before. You get in it, and they're like, "Oh, okay, ready for this launch?" And you're like, "Yeah, it's gonna be awesome, right?" And they're like, "Okay, here we go." And then you're like suddenly thrown back in your seat, and you're like, "Are my ears working?" You're like, "We're
It's
going
quiet.
really fast. Like, why can't I hear you?" All you hear is like a or something like that, and you're like, "Okay, I guess that was kind of neat." And then you get into somebody's car like. We only heard this one that's out here with an exhaust pipe literally sticking out of the trunk. It was one of the craziest things I've ever seen.
You want to hear it? It's probably one of the loudest.
I can't. That's crazy where the exhaust is coming out. It's about to be loud in here. Oh, he's got like toggle switches and everything in there. Get the fuel pump by. Like, I don't even have to be in the car to just enjoy it because you revved it up and it just like growly, poppy.
I was going to say, pretty throaty.
Oh, yeah. And one of those things, again, as soon as you mash the throttle, I don't care how long it takes to get to 60. This thing sounds incredible. I'm sure it tosses you right back.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it's about, man.
But, that's for us. We're car geeks.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
We geek out over stuff like that. And the regular Joe wants to go buy a Tesla and go fast, quick, as quickly as possible. So there's people for that. There's people for everything. Mm-hmm. Just like there's people that are going to build, an 800 horsepower Subaru over buying a GT3.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I have one brother that I can't believe he's my brother, but he he buys a vehicle and he doesn't know what engine it has in it, and he doesn't care. And I'll ask him things about it. And he's like, no, I don't know. I don't really care. And he tells me all the time, if I had a way to just have the car drive me to where I want to go and I could just sleep in it and I wouldn't have to touch anything, he's like, I would be the first person in line for it. And every time I'm like, you are not my brother. You leave this room right now. Like, horrible.
On this entire trip, Tim's like, ugh, these roads are so straight.
Yeah. It was terrible. They were incredibly straight.
Now that you said that, there was a video. It actually blew up because it was here in LA on the 405. There was someone in a Tesla on his way to work sleeping. There was a video. I could probably find it. There was he had a blanket. I think he had a blanket over him. He was sleeping, and the car was just driving on the freeway.
In
traffic. He was in traffic.
You didn't have to control the throttle?
I'm not sure because I thought that it had to look at your eyes in order to know that because you still have to be conscious. That was way back when they first came out with that self-driving feature. And there was a video and I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, this is not good.
That's weird.
Because people are, like, if that actually was, either correct or legal,
yeah,
people are going to start doing that. They're going to be like, I can just sleep an extra half hour in my car.
Eat some cereal, eat pie. My Uber driver the other day was just trying to eat his pie, and he got pulled over with me in the back seat.
Really?
Yeah. He goes, man, Jimmy, can you believe that? I was just trying to eat my pie, man. You saw me. And I was like, I saw you. Was it good pie? He's like, it's pecan, man.
I don't think it was the pie eating. I think it was the 4-lane change.
Oh yeah, it was the 4-lane change that he made as he tried to take the first bite of his pie.
Yeah.
Man, Ubers are a sketchy thing.
Dude, it's sketchy.
Trusting somebody to drive you is definitely... I've been in some that made me not want to be in them.
Yeah. Oh, man, you got to think about, too, with self-driving cars. Everybody brings up the morality thing, which I genuinely think is truly a question to think. But, like, okay, car sees oncoming vehicle that you're going to hit, and then, it's like trying to detect where it needs to swerve or brake or whatever. And it's like, okay, off to the right, there is a woman pushing a baby stroller. So do I save the woman pushing the baby stroller? Or does car decide that, oh, well, my driver is 65, male, has led a pretty good life, so instead of killing the lady and the baby, I'm going to kill the driver and just plow right into the car in front of me, or like these things that like only a human can think in those, I don't even know if rational or morality or whatever ways that you can think where it's like, oh, this is happening, I need to make a decision. It's like, you're going to put that into the hands of a computer?
In my opinion, self-driving cars will never be a good option.
Yeah.
Because you're trusting somebody for not only your life, you're trusting people for other people's lives. Mm-hmm. You're trusting a computer. There was a case, I'm not sure if it was Tesla or which car it was. I think it was a Tesla. It was up in Northern California. The car was driving in the very left lane of the freeway. Now all of a sudden that lane ends, and there's a concrete barrier right coming up to it. Car didn't know it was coming. Went straight into the barrier.
Oh, jeez. And you got to wonder too with these things. Like, remember back in computer class? I don't know if you guys had this. Maybe I'm like too like young to. Oh, you had computer classes. We had abacus classes. But anyway, we had computer class, and it used to be where the teacher could go and say, oh, we were trying to figure out how to use Excel, and you'd be like, hey, Miss So-and-so, I can't figure out how to do this. And she's like, oh, okay, hold on. And then all of a sudden, boop, she takes over your mouse, and she's like, here, this is what you need to do. And it's like, if it's that easy for somebody, I know they already had that hooked up, but you see hackers these days, they can bump into your phone in like 0.2 seconds. It's like if you're driving along your car, somebody rolls up and they're like super blacked out, like Chevy Astro van or something, and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna kill that guy today," you know,
Yeah, like
whatever.
maybe-
Just hack in. Okay, you jerk, steering wheel immediately left, send him off a cliff. I mean, what?
There's a lot of variables to it, and or things that can be considered as to why it's not a good idea.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, man.
We'll see where it goes.
Even the Subs now, they have that like eyesight stuff. Like when you guys work on Subarus now, like if somebody brings in a newer one, is it significantly harder now to work on newer ones because like it's not?
No.
Okay.
All those things don't really affect us.
Okay. Is there just like a lot more wires now though that you have to sift through, or is it just kind of like whatever?
Yeah, I mean, for the new cars, we're not swapping them. And
Okay.
stuff like, so we don't really have to deal with that portion of it. It's
Yeah.
mainly strict mechanical stuff. But it doesn't really affect us.
Yeah.
But yes, there is a lot more.
Yeah. Once you swap them, then you got to get it. You were talking to us about like CAN bus and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Every computer talks to each other now. It's
And
not like
that's so much harder. And granted, there's companies out there that can help you with the swaps, but or with the wiring portion of it. But it's still
yeah.
a lot. It's not as simple as like the older cars.
Yeah. The ECU just controlled like the motor. Everything around it was just sort of like its own thing. It just
Yeah.
kind of didn't care what the motor was doing. Now it's like, why do your brake lights need to know what the motor is doing? Like, there is no reason. Why does your dome light, that like just lights up your map light? Why does that need to know what your engine's doing or like be any at all tied in?
Everything's connected now.
It's crazy.
so much.
This was
Jim.
such a great cap off too. I feel like we've gone just like, I don't know. I know I've been more intimately involved in the FOS, but it's super cool to have just gone through getting some old junker, fixing it up, coming down here, coming over to meet you guys, seeing incredible Subarus here. Like I said, check out their Instagram page, Renner Racing Development, and I geek out. I follow you guys and I just geek out over all the photos that you post because
I gave you guys a follow this morning as well, actually. So if you notice that uptick of one,
Appreciate that.
Yeah, but it's like seeing all these custom setups. We're talking like inverted intake manifolds, giant turbochargers, engines. There's like EJ engines all over here, and like heads, crankshafts, all that stuff is like. And you guys, the one thing I gotta say is like, I really appreciate all the help that you've been able to give us too, and like just chatting with you guys about stuff. So that's been really awesome. You got to support good people. So if you guys,
Yep.
if you guys out there have listened to me especially talk enough about Subarus on this Podventure, and all of a sudden you find yourself like on Auto Tempest or whatever online, you're looking up Subarus and you're like, why am I doing this? Anyway, if you decide to go this route, and you really want to get crazy with it, you should hit these guys up. They do sweet stuff. But
it's been awesome, Jim. And I tell you what, it's been way cool listening to you guys talk, and like even just like when you guys. Dude, I just see you guys like light up. You start talking about certain aspects of the car, and then just like this excitement level goes up, and these genuine smiles. And I know at least 3 car terms now, so that's really neat for me personally. And it's wild, man.
I can't wait until you get a car to build.
Oh, it's a bug. Once you catch it,
I can tell that. That's what I'm fearful of because I've got enough hobbies that I'm into.
Yeah. This dude though, like Mark will like. Just like I try to fill my time, like every single night I'm going to bed, like looking at car stuff. Mark will try to fill his entire mind with just like, oh, what hunt can I go on? If I was in Alaska at this time of year, what could I be hunting? If I was in like Delaware, at whatever time of the year, like what could I be hunting? It's nuts. But yeah,
racing is definitely a similar kind of bug. I mean, that's all. It at some point it consumes you.
Yeah,
it's you wake up with it, you go to bed with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and
because you're always trying to figure something out. It's never solved.
Yeah.
Well, there's always room for improvement. Always. Yeah. So, with that said, you keep trying to do that.
Right.
It's whether it's something small on like your street driven car or in your full blown race car, you continue to look for that extra give, extra second, extra everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's why that's. I talked about time attack a little bit. That's the beauty of it. Every single team evolves so much every single year that, at some point you're like, well, when is this going to stop? It's never going to stop.
Right.
No.
Everyone's going to keep evolving. Everyone gets faster, and that's the beauty of it because you come, you come back to this track and you know what you did last year. Now that's your benchmark, and you try to beat it, and you keep pushing it. And all these cars, they're built to the limit, and they're being pushed to the limit as well. And it's a sport where you're like, I really hope this car makes it. All I need is one lap. And till a lot of people have run into issues, but no one gives up.
Yeah.
People keep going because
once
I can do this, or I could have done that, and you're like, I have to go back and do it.
I felt that a little bit when we were out on the trails. Like, I thought that we'd get out on the trails and I'd be like, oh, I just finished building this thing. I don't want to break it. And then, it was like a little bit that way at first. And then all of a sudden I just found myself like, I want to see what this thing can do. It's just like, I want to break it almost is what I was thinking. Like, I want to push it to its max.
You want to test the limit. Yeah. See where it breaks.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but of course, Mark is like, we still need to make it to LA. We still need to make it to LA. And I was like, I'll just jump it once. But it is fun. So anyway, but like we said, we're going to leave the Forester here in good hands. We're going to have you guys go over it, do a couple of things. We'll probably have the transmission, the pretty significant grind into third gear, which we've kind of worked around a little bit, but addressed and any other stuff that you guys feel necessary to make this thing. This is going to be our Podventure mobile from now on. So, yeah.
You heard it here, folks.
You heard it here.
All I got to say is cars are cool. Subarus are cool. Deal with it.
Yeah. Any last calls from you, Damyan?
Just like he said, Subarus are the way to go. When it comes to cars, they can do everything. I'm really glad I got to meet you guys. Thank you for having me on here. If you're ever in LA, come check us out.
Oh, heck yeah. If you are, awesome. You took time out of your Sunday to do this podcast as well, which is super cool. So anyway, like we said, any car guys out there listening, they're like super cool car guys, support people that are awesome as well. So check these guys out. And yeah. Oh, man, I always feel every time we end one of these Podventures, like at the very end, last episode,
I don't want it to be over.
You don't want it to be
over. I
over.
feel like
it's
we're even hanging this on just because of that.
Yeah, we are a little bit, but we're going to let this one in. So
thanks, Damyan.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, guys. We'll catch you guys next time. See you later.
Bye.
That was awesome.
That was way cool.
That was awesome, man.
Yeah, that was a really cool one, man. Appreciate it. That was a perfect way to end it. So
awesome, man.
I think people are going to like this one. I just have, I've been noticing, like some people talk, like you got Sam Solholtz out there and whatever, they're starting to talk about cars and whatnot, and people are getting a little bit nerded out. And I even talked to a couple people out there. It was funny because, you start finding Subaru fans, like as soon as you start talking about Subarus, you'll pick out the Subaru fans immediately. Because,
they're going to come out of the woods.
They do. There's one dude on Instagram, I was talking to him, and he's like, dude, what's your next Podventure? And I was like, oh, you're going to love it. We're like, and he's kind of one of our influencers too, so I didn't mind telling him, before it came out or whatever.
Who was this?
It was Holtworks.
Yeah.
Justin Holt. And I'm like, we're working on this off-road rig, and we're going to do this Coues deer hunt. He was like, oh, sweet, what'd you guys get? And I was like, well, we got a Subaru Forester. And he was like, no way. He's like, dude. He's like, immediately I'm getting pictures of his Subaru Forester.
No way.
And he's like, dude, I got this crazy thing, this setup. He's got his done in some kind of way. I don't think he turboed it, but he did some other crazy stuff to his Forester. Mm-hmm. He's like, mine's off-road too, he's like doing all that. And it was just like out of nowhere, like all of a sudden he was like, fellow Subaru, bro.
I think for your guys' industry, aside obviously trucks are everyone's trucks. Yeah. I think Subaru is the next best thing. Because you have the space, you have the reliability, and you can take you anywhere.
Yeah.
And I think people are going to find that really cool that you guys are dealing with Subaru.
Well, and there's things, the one cool thing also is like we're talking, like the whole premise or one of the premises behind it was like, oh, like guys will go to Arizona, but then they'll trailer like their Razor, and then they'll, they're basically in a semi-open vehicle that's super crazy loud, and it's like, well, we've got it all in one. And it's better, and it's more comfortable, and it's got a heater, and like it's waterproof.
Yeah, this thing like you can drive it on the street. It was It was really comfortable to drive across the country. Like it. When you get to off road, you don't have to get out, unclamp everything off the trailer, back the Razor off, find a place to park the truck with the trailer. Lock it all up.
Or even just versus a truck. Like I said, I'm a truck guy, and I will always have a truck. But like, You want to turn this thing around? Oh, no problem. Zoop. You know, the truck.
Yeah. Dude, it was amazing. It was like, oh, okay, we're at the trail. You know?
And then here's the other thing with Subarus. You get that thing out of the dealership, and you can go anywhere. Like, you can go to a lot more places than with a lot of these shrugs that people say that they can do anything.
Oh, like stupid, like crossover SUVs and all that crap now. Yeah, they're just, it's all front wheel drive based.
Yeah. Or like, let's say for example,
dude, to me, like, and this is like and I totally interrupted, but like, sorry, crossover fans, but like, it's like, I want a minivan, but I don't want to say I have a minivan.
Right.
Like, that's all it is.
Yeah. And even like that truck that we have over here, I can go so many more places with a Subaru than I can with that truck.
Yeah. It's true.
It's huge. It's real. It's all-wheel drive, but it's, when you put it in all-wheel drive, it's that, you can do 25, 30 miles.
Right.
Hours.
Yeah.
And Subarus are great. They're great cars. Now I've only had like the STIs, but my dad's had a lot. He's had like every Subaru under the sun.
Yeah.
And I've driven a lot of them. In my, what's funny? So I used to have a hatchback, STI hatchback, right?
I like those.
And man, in my opinion, that is the most useful car I'll ever have.
Mm-hmm.
I did everything in that thing, from racing and literally going to compete at the track. I obviously didn't have seats. I would sleep in it.
Oh, hell yeah.
So it's 100 degrees outside. I don't mind. I have the truck pop. I have a pillow. I have everything.
Dude, that's awesome.
In it. I go surfing. I go skiing in it. There's nothing. When we built the shop, I still had the car, and we actually ended up building this room. I carried all the stuff in the STI.
Dude, that's awesome.
There's still 2 bucket seats in it.
Yeah.
So I couldn't move the seats, and it's still everything fit. We did everything in that car.
That's cool.
That's wild, man.
Now I have this stand. It's not the same thing because it's not a hatchback, but the hatchback is amazing.
Yeah. Dude, the hatch is cool. When Sam and I went out to Dirt Fish and did that rally school,
Mm-hmm.
I was in a hatchback, and he was in a sedan at first, and then his sedan like broke or something happened to it, and so he swapped over to a hatchback, and he was like, "Dude, this is so much better." Mm-hmm. It was crazy. Like, or at least I know for that application.
The suspension changes throughout those years, and the handling on the 08 is far more superior than the 07s, like the GD chassis. Far more superior.
Yeah.
And that's why I noticed that, because I obviously used to drive mine, and then I went to teach someone, and I drove their GD chassis, and it was so much different. And not in a good way. I mean,
right.
in a less superior way. I was like, wow, they really did change that much from one chassis to another.
Right.
And then, especially if you have the steering rack off the new ones, that is a lot quicker.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. We have we're talking about suspension and handling. So on the race car, everything is spherical bearings.
Okay, yeah.
So there's no give in that car. You turn it, the car turns, and then we put the 2015 STI rack on it. That car is on rails.
That's awesome.
Like, most people complain about the race cars. I can't say enough good things about ours. The car is so amazing. It's because of the diffs, it drives like it's on train tracks, and then the handling is insane.
That's awesome. Dude, I love cars that handle well. Like I would take, and there's something about like driving. People talk about driving slow cars fast. It's better than driving a fast car slow or whatever. And it's like when you're driving a car that's just properly set up, and like I don't care how fast it's going. Like when I go into a turn, it's like it just gets the turn
That's your
right.
ultimate fun factor.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not about the power and everything, but if the car's set up correctly.
Yeah.
That's why I don't like these cars, but a lot of people here drive Miatas. Or for the track, a lot of them have their their normal race car, and they also have a Miata because it's that much fun. I'm like, I'll never agree to be like, yeah, this is probably
still
fun.
a Miata.
It's but these guys have a blast. I'm like, I'll never buy that thing like ever. But it's cool to see that these guys are actually having so much fun with properly set up Miatas. It's still 110 horsepower. But
Right. That is it's.
Have you ever been in one?
In a Miata?
Yeah, those old ones.
No, I haven't been in an old one.
So sketchy. This dude gave me a ride on track once. I was scared, man.
We're really.
Yeah, because this car is not fast.
It's so tight.
But it brakes, and so he's driving, and we're going way past my braking points. I'm like, oh, gonna make it? Like, are we just gonna shoot out of this turn? And the car brakes. Like, well, yeah, the car weighs 300 pounds.
Yeah.
It has no power, so we actually it feels fast, but we weren't going that fast. And it's just so sketchy to see someone go past your brake line, right? Your braking point.
Like, we're dead.
And he continues on full throttle. I'm like, oh. and the car turns. So I'm like, oh my god.
Dude, when somebody really understands their car and figures it out, like if you get in a strange car that you're not that familiar with and you're in the passenger seat, like, and then you're in them with them racing, like, yeah, the braking gets freaky because you're like, I feel like we should have brake way back there, but we're still going.
Yep.
Are we gonna make it?
Yep. It's for a lot of people, it's really hard to get used to that stuff. And it's even for me, because this car, the brakes are amazing.
Oh, they're huge.
And
yeah.
even the second to last test day that we had, I couldn't find the brake points. I'm like, I start braking, the car brakes too fast. I have to let off the brake. You have to continue pushing the limit, and then the problem is that when you find the limit and you go a little bit past it, on
big
certain turns, there's big consequences, especially when a car like this. Here, I'll show you. This is a video that I actually just saw that they posted, and this is the car. This is a slow motion of it, of the car coming to under braking, and this is how much it gives. Now I hit the brake.
Whoa.
And look at what the splitter's doing.
Yeah.
And that's why right now we ordered new springs for that, because the aero was defeating the springs.
Okay.
And when I hit the brakes, the car dives, and the splitter is just bam, 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 bam. And I mean, the car's like this much off the ground, so only a little bit. But yeah, the springs are apparently too soft, so I just got a set of new springs. Hopefully it doesn't do that anymore.
Right.
Do you guys use a lot of slow motion to like look at those like fine things?
No, that's the first thing. That's the first time I did it, because I was like, I can actually, because I wanted to show my dad how much the splitter is doing this.
Right. Okay.
Because it hits the ground, and it keeps, every time it hits the ground, it does this. Just the entire splitter is just shaking.
Yeah, and we're creating kind of air pockets and stuff. I'm sure it's not.
Yeah, it's not ideal. It's not ideal. And then we have this massive mound on it. It's made out of aluminum, but it's huge. The splitter is huge. I mean, the splitter is almost twice the size of the stable.
Yeah.
And
it almost reminds me of like one of those old like Bosuzoku like Japanese cars where they have the like almost like a platform sticking off.
Yeah. And I wanted to show my dad how much it's doing, because the mount broke already once.
Oh, really?
And we're talking about something extremely rigid.
Yeah.
And my dad was like, how the did this break? Because he was sure, he was like, there's no way this thing's breaking.
Yeah.
Like, dude, because I was testing the car, and I come around this turn, I'm like, okay, something's wrong. It keeps rubbing. So I pull in, and the mount had cracked in a couple places. We pulled it off, and at that point we couldn't put it back on. So we left, and then my dad made it even more rigid. But I wanted to show him how much, like, why it's breaking. Because now all of this is going to the mount.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dude, it's cool stuff.
All right, that'll wrap it up for this episode of the Vortex Nation podcast. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Hit that subscribe button so you can always stay up to date on the latest happenings over here at the Vortex Nation podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram at Vortex Nation Podcast. Again, everybody, thanks, and happy hunting and shooting. We appreciate it. Have a good one.